Thanks for staying with us on Morning Live. Yesterday, the Eastern Cape Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, MEC Xolile Nqatha, nullified the appointment of Democratic Alliance Nqaba Bhanga as executive mayor of the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro. Now, the proceedings, which took place on Friday last week, were preceded by a bizarre event when two men or three walked in and physically removed the Speaker, Buyelwa Mafaya, from the chambers. And Nqatha said that the election of the acting Speaker, who presided over the election of the executive mayor, was done in contravention of the law because the Speaker had not resigned. Now, the ANC has welcomed the nullification of the mayoral election, while the DA has said that it was legitimate and that the party is threatening legal action. Professor Joleen Steyn Kotze joins us now, Senior Research Specialist in Democracy and Citizenship at the Human Sciences Research Council. Thanks so much for your time this morning, Professor, and welcome to Morning Live.
Thank you very much.
So the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro has been struggling with electing a mayor for about a year now, and this seems to be an ongoing problem for the metro. But how should we look at this? How should we read this particular stalemate that's currently playing out and the inability to elect a mayor?
You know, I think for me, the bigger, broader question is not necessarily just around, kind of the inability of going out, electing a mayor, appointing a city manager, creating almost that administrative stability. This is a metro that has been characterized by quite a lot of administrative and political instability, arguably since 2011. And I think kind of the politics and the behavior of political parties and almost, how can one say, that strategic chess game to get those seats of higher power within the metro has really culminated into a dysfunctional form of politics where I think political expediency in meeting goals of political parties are taking precedence over the administrative and political stability and strong political leadership needed to start dealing with some of the service delivery challenges and some of the critical issues the metro is facing. In particular, we're facing, of course, the COVID-19 pandemic. Numbers in the metro are climbing, but we also have a crippling drought. You are looking at economic activity that might be stagnating. So for me, there is a need to really for political parties to step back and say, we need to start looking more at the greater good and not necessarily what our own political goals are.
Now, Professor Steyn Kotze, as you say, this instability really goes back some time. And if you look at this election, the latest one, it took place a year after the now late Mongameli Bobani was removed. And Bobani at the time was elected a year after Athol Trollip was removed. So looking at that, the DA says that the COGTA MEC Nqatha doesn't have the power to nullify Bhanga's election as mayor, and the DA on their part have threatened to approach the courts. So who is correct in this instance?
Well, it is, I think, a very, very interesting question because, of course, one cannot ignore the broader politics that have played out in the saga around a coalition government within Nelson Mandela Bay. We know under the Athol Trollip administration, the coalition was very fragile and almost to a degree, the coalition relationship between political parties became a way for smaller parties to flex political muscle in order to try and gain some more advantage or some more benefit. With the election of the former Mayor Bobani, what we also saw was this perception that it was a means for the ANC almost to regain the metro, so to speak, using a back door. And now, of course, we have seen kind of the saga play out where you have yet another DA elected mayor in council, albeit under very, very controversial circumstances. And I think this is where the crux of the matter for me would lie, is to say, that when you are looking at who you are electing as mayor, you really are going to need a person that has strong, compassionate leadership, and somebody who's almost able to bring a council that is very fractured along political lines together, that there can be some semblance of administrative stability.
Now, just going back to the events on Friday, Professor Steyn Kotze, Buyelwa Mafaya was physically removed, and there was some footage doing the rounds of that. But it was alleged that one of the two men seen in that footage was actually her bodyguard. Do you know of any more information in terms of what actually transpired and afterwards as well?
No, I think, I'm very much aware as much as what has been reported in the media. However, I do also need to flag that I think it is highly concerning that a council meeting can break down to such an extent, and one can see almost the footage of how she was removed, is very, very disturbing, considering also that we are into the 16 days of activism against violence against women and children. And I think for me that almost symbolizes this complete breakdown and dysfunctionality within the council environment. And I am hopeful that as the council now moves forward, that those almost bridges can be built, because without councillors and political parties within council able to cooperate in a shall we say in a friendly manner, the council will not be able to move forward. Also, going back, this is not the first time that a council meeting has broken down and escalated into what can be seen as a form of violence. And again, for me, that is a worrying trend, especially considering that we are moving towards a 2021 local government election.
Professor, coming to the election of Nqaba Bhanga, what did you make of the fact that he was elected into that position unopposed?
Well, I think, to a degree, one has to bear in mind that within this coalition situation that Nelson Mandela Bay finds itself, and it's not something that is unique to the municipality as well, there would have been a lot of, shall we say, backdoor negotiations and discussions amongst political parties. So I think what we maybe saw was a little bit of political wheeling and dealing to say, okay, if this party takes up the mayoral seat, then how would the executive committee be established? What are the developmental projects that would be prioritized? Which positions would be given to which smaller parties, for example, to kind of uphold what can be seen as a very, very fragile coalition. But for me, the more important question is how sustainable will that be? Because one of the key lessons from Nelson Mandela Bay, of course, is that your political wheeling and dealing actually created a situation where if smaller political parties were not happy, they could threaten to pull out of a coalition and, of course, then again create that political instability that inevitably negatively affects not councillors but the broader public and citizens of the metro.
And to that point, Professor, municipalities, especially the metros, seem to have become political footballs for politicians, and it appears to be survival of the fittest. Would you say that this is democracy at work, or is it an abuse of democracy with citizens and service delivery being sacrificed?
I think what we're looking at really is a dysfunctionality in governance, a dysfunctionality in how political parties engage one another. In order for a council, especially coalition council, to work, you need cordial relations between your political parties. You cannot have a situation where political parties construct opposition parties or members of other political parties they don't agree with as a proverbial mortal enemy. Because again, that discourse almost creates my opinion is the only one that matters, and I will do whatever I must and can in order to make sure that I achieve what I want to achieve. Our Constitution commits us to consultation, to tolerance, to being open to political difference and difference in political viewpoints. And I think for me, a key lesson here as well is how political parties do politics within a council meeting, for me, needs to shift a little bit more towards a consultative and more cordial approach in order to set that developmental agenda.
Professor, the MEC is still considering what steps to take. And in this regard, do you see any similarities and which can be drawn with what we saw play out in Tshwane and that back and forth with MEC Maile here in Gauteng?
No, I mean, it is very, very possible, that one can have this back and forth, and, the courts can also be brought in to try and resolve some sort of stalemate, for argument's sake, with what had happened. But we may also find a situation where civil society or the broader public and PE eventually say enough is enough. And we could potentially then also see what had happened within the Makhanda municipality, where a civic coalition, for argument's sake, actually took the council to court and won their case, where the courts found that because of the political infighting and various other reasons, that the council was not delivering on its constitutional mandate and therefore had to be disbanded. And given the level of instability that we have seen over the last number of years, it would be interesting for me to see if there would be that civic mobilization.
So what is the way forward? Where does the solution lie? What needs to be done in the interest of the citizens of Nelson Mandela Bay Metro?
Well, I think one of the first key steps, of course, would be that councillors within council from opposing political parties will need to find some sort of way to work together in a cordial manner. And also that we kind of need to move away that council is a political theatre. We are in a situation, and again, it's not something that is new. We saw it 2011 onwards, where when intra-party conflict arises as well as inter-party conflict arises, it plays out within council to the detriment of citizens, because once that happens, council cannot make decisions, developmental plans cannot be approved, budgets cannot be approved, and effectively then you start bringing governance and service delivery to a standstill. And I think there needs to be a reshift in thinking amongst the political actors to say that council is not a political theatre, but rather the forum where we are going to advance the interests of citizens.
Well, thank you so much for your time this morning, Professor Joleen Steyn Kotze from the HSRC, helping us track the ongoing developments in the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro in the Eastern Cape. And as always, you're welcome to share your views with us as well at Morning Live SABC. And let's just quickly recap on our question.